It has been a while. I've been, in the last 6 months, just guzzling caffeine. And taking a few pills, all to deal with the woes of college. And you might notice, I'm trying something new. See, I actually have a green screen that works now. I've been trying to do this for months, and I finally figured out what my problem was. So now, I'm looking a little bit more professional. But that's not why you're here. See, you want to know how to mod Skyrim, or you just like my content and want to watch that. Either way is fine, I don't really care. But that's what I'm going to tell you how to do, and you might wonder, what makes me qualified to tell you how to mod Skyrim? And, well, to that, I say this is the internet, and I can do whatever the fuck I want. Your questions can be asked at the end of the lecture, or in the comments. First things first, you need to know what you want to download to make the perfect Skyrim fan. I recommend these family-friendly mods. Now once you've looked through the sites and you've grabbed every single mod you want, like you put a pot on top of a shopkeeper and just went hog wild in a store, you need to worry about 3 things. 1. You don't have too many mods. The hard mod limit is 255 ESPs. What's an ESP? That's a good question. I don't really know. However, what I can tell you is that an ESP is basically just a mod that is counted towards the number. You would probably be thinking, wouldn't that be all mods? And the answer is no, because ESMs exist. And what's an ESM? Thanks, Ibuki, but you're an idiot. Hey, it's me, Editor Parker here. And as it turns out, every time I say an ESM, well, that is actually a master file, and not what I was explaining at all. What I meant to say was an ESL. So every time you hear ESM, replace that with ESL, and you'll be good. Alright. Back to this jackass. It's like an ESP, but doesn't count. So how can you tell the difference? Well, best that I can tell you is it says it on the site. Now, every mod you download is going to be an ESP unless it's expressly stated otherwise on their page. Some of them will be ESPs marked as ESMs, which won't actually count to the number. And some will just be ESPs, and some will be both. And some will just be ESMs. I am not a programmer. I don't know how any of this shit works. What I can tell you, however, is it just works. 2. You need to make sure those mods are compatible. This entire time, you should have been using that thing in your head, you know, eyes, to read the pages to make sure you're not downloading incompatible mods. Let me tell you a story. First time I did modding in Skyrim a few years ago, I had both Sacrosanct and Better Vampires. Now see, those 2 mods do the same thing. However, there was a compatibility patch that didn't actually work. And I should have just listened and read where it said they are not compatible, because that motherfucker corrupted all my game saves and I lost however much progress and then didn't play Skyrim for another 2 years. So, I assure you, this isn't that hard. It may be boring, but if you want to work in Skyrim, you're gonna need to learn how to read. I recommend having a Google Doc with genres of mods listed out so you know what you're working with. If you're going to have a very small modded game with a few mods, no problem, don't worry about this step. But if you're like me and you have 300 mods, this is kind of vital. Trust me, this will save you time in the long run if you're like me and want a shit ton of mods. 3. You need to make sure your mods are compatible with the most current version of Skyrim. See, it just updated to the Anniversary Edition, and that will break almost every mod, thankfully. The people at Bethesda did realize this was going to be a problem, and they gave it to the SKSE people ahead of time, so it still works. However, almost every mod you downloaded isn't going to work very well in Anniversary Edition. It's kind of a crapshoot between if they work or not. So you run into this crossroads where you can either be in Anniversary Edition and only use new mods that have been updated to work in it. You can try mods anyway and hope they work in Anniversary Edition. Or you can both rerun Skyrim to an earlier patch and tell it to not update in the future. If you ask me, I think the best option is just to revert Skyrim to an earlier patch and then just tell it to not update in the future, and then you don't have to worry about whether the mods have been updated or not, because you can just get earlier versions of mods, flip them right in there, and you're good to go. The beautiful thing is, if you're like me, you wanted to try the Anniversary Edition, most of them work on the last version of Skyrim anyway, because they were just Creation Club mods in Skyrim. And so, if you revert to a patch, you can just download them one by one inside Skyrim, and most of them are going to work. So, you download Vortex. You then download all your mods to Vertex, realize Vortex is bad and will probably corrupt your game save. So then you delete Vortex, don't move all your mods over, lay down in a ball and cry. Before realizing you're like 23, you get up and just download Mod Organizer and re-download all the mods from scratch. Or, take it from me and download Mod Organizer 2 from the fucking start. Some of you might be wondering, why is Vortex so bad? And well, I'm glad you asked, commenter. The problem is, Vortex injects the mods directly into your Skyrim folder. That might not be a problem if, again, you have like 60 mods or something, and really, I've used Vortex many times before. Didn't have too much issue. However, if you have like 300 mods, again, like me, the problem is those mods overwrite each other physically in that folder. So every time I opened the game, my file would load in, and it would get corrupted without fail. As soon as I switched to Mod Organizer 2, that problem, out the window. So if you just take it from me, stick with Mod Organizer 2 from the start, and don't waste weeks of your life trying to mod this game when you don't have to. Now, I promised we'd talk about loot, and I don't mean finding a cool Daedric sword or Warhammer on a fallen bandit. No, I mean the optimization tool. Now this will order all of your mods for you, and it'll tell you if any are conflicting, if any need edits or anything like that. It'll even give you tutorials on how to edit them, and so this is the most important application you can possibly have for modding Skyrim besides, you know, the mod organizer itself, which organizes the mods. Now there's going to be a few more applications I'm going to recommend, but that's going to be later after we get through the next part. Now for the fun part. Trial and error. Now you have to begin opening the game, figuring out why some mods work, some don't, some conflict, some have compatibility issues, some float above Solitude Harbor, causing a game to crash every time you're outside Solitude, and then realizing it's entirely because you have the anniversary edition of the game, and it broke all your mods. And once you do that, your game will be so much more stable. Trust me, I went to college. Now this part can be frustrating. I know, I spent many hours doing it myself, but it is a vital part of the modding process for you to have a baptism by fire. This is also where, like I said before, you can purely just use loot, like me, who doesn't know shit about programming. Or you can make it a perfectly stable baby by tailoring this mod list perfectly, spending hours making sure every mod is in the correct place so nothing overwrites anything without your say-so. Now there's no perfect mod list out there, which is a blessing and a curse, because that means you can perfectly make Skyrim how you want it. You can't just like go online and be like, what is a perfect mod list? Because that just doesn't exist. I could give you my mod list and I think it's perfect, but it's perfect for me. But do remember, we love modders and all the time they spend modding Skyrim. Skyrim would not be as loved or remembered without all of their hard work. However, we also need to remember that they are closer to like Shakespearean monkeys on typewriters fueled by passion and Mountain Dew, more than they are like professional programmers. They don't necessarily know or think about making their mods 100% compatible with everything else. A better allegory, I suppose, is if you think in a programming team, right? Where you have everyone working on the same game and working on the same features that are all going into the finished product and they all need to work together. Communication's the biggest thing you need in the video game industry. Now, imagine if this was like a 12,000 person company, each person working on a different feature for a game and had about zero communication between each other. Then you can kind of see why some of these mods may not be the most clean and compatible. Alright, so you're basically a veteran. You've gone through, you've done some trial and error. You have your mod list. You have a perfect spreadsheet of all the genres. But there's one step that every modder worth their salted french fries cooked in a tiny home fryer does. Is SS Edit. As I said, you're gonna need to clean up some mods. And luckily, this can be as easy as you want. You can either just use the quick auto clean yourself and follow loot to just go click, 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 click. It's that simple. Time consuming, but that simple. Or you can take your scalpel, slice open every mod, and get into the nitty gritty yourself and perform mod surgery. And once you do all that, your game is now stable. stable as like a house of cards in Tornado Valley, but that's kind of Skyrim from the get-go. Skyrim is a great game. Even when you realize that every quest essentially boils down into go to this location, kill this type of enemy, grab this item, possibly kill a boss, and come back. But despite that, it's still a ton of fun, immersing yourself in the world, talking to NPCs, and even delving into said dungeons. I probably have about 1,500 hours in my lifetime on this game, starting back on the PS3, and then having almost 500 on Legendary Edition alone. Now, hopefully this video and all of my shenanigans have helped you understand how to mod Skyrim. And you can use this on all of Bethesda's games, from Morrowind to Fallout 4, they all work essentially the same way. And hopefully, when you do this, it'll give you the tools that you need to mod other games. Happy modding, fellow lab lovers of Skyrim.